Hail and welcome, friends. It is your resident aggro mage yet again for another deck tech. This week is going to be the Call of the Void, the Voidwalker deck, as promised in previous videos. Now, I wanted to make this deck, I'll re-sleeve this one real quick. I wanted to make this deck way more powerful because I saw the potential of Harbinger. On setup, determine 3 random squares. Once per turn, cast a minion to one of them and for 1 less. So if you roll a d20 and you get, a bunch of spaces by the opponent's avatar, or directly in front, or off to the side in a far corner or column, then, the potential is just out of this world. The trick is to make it consistent, right? So planning around the randomness of it, putting things in the deck that will guarantee a bit more consistency and card draw, on top of filling the deck with absolute annoying Voidwalkers to poke and prod your opponent with to death. So without further ado, let's begin. Alright, so just as before, we have our 30 sites. I usually don't run more than that because consistency is key, especially with this deck. So, little bit of format change. Instead of me hovering over everything with my camera, I am just going to place it on my tripod. I'm just going to feature everything as we go along. So, getting started, we're running, total, we're running 8 rivers. We got 3 spring, 3 summer, 2 autumn rivers. The reason why is because of their Genesis effect. Each one of them has Genesis. Look at your next spell. You may put it on the bottom of your spell book. I keep drawing parallels to Magic the Gathering because it makes the most sense to people just joining the game coming from that space like I did. You get to scry. You get to look at the top and decide if you want it or put it on the bottom. Along with the minion Fenvale Muse, which will be shown pretty shortly, you can activate the Genesis of Rivers twice, therefore allowing you to dig through your spells, toss the ones you don't need, keep the ones you do, and through our draw spells we will be able to manipulate our deck, which is pretty interesting. That will help us get to our Voidwalkers quicker. Then we run a Kelp Cavern. Look at the bottom of 3 spells, put 1 on top of your spell book. After stacking with the rivers, this would be pretty good if you just want to save those for later. For a, scry for a cheaper spell or something you need, but all the stuff you're putting at the bottom you do intend to use anyways, use that Kelp Cavern. You can take from the bottom of your deck. You're just cycling through your deck a little bit more. We got a Deep Sea. It just has 2 water threshold. Pretty good. Elder Ruins. So we do run a bunch of Shoggoths in this deck. Sacrifice a minion here, cast a Shoggoth Submerger from your collection. We did keep the collection from... This is a build on the Precon, essentially. The Precon of the Harbinger deck that comes in the Prophets of Doom Precon box. And that's what this deck was born of, right? So we kept a couple cards from that. That is a good one because you can get a Shoggoth from your collection if you just sack a minion there. So a frog token or whatever. Then we got an Algae Bloom. That just came in the Precon. I think it's still pretty useful. You get another air threshold this turn because we are water air. We got 2 Croaking Swamps. Frog token. Froge. Good chump blockers and they can submerge. And then we got 2 floodgates here. We got 2 troll bridges. The first time a lone enemy enters here each turn, strike it unless they discard. That's pretty mean, making them discard by trying to attack this site. And it's a power 3, so it can annihilate most lower power stuff. We did keep this Peculiar Report. Genesis, you can cast a Horrible Hybrids from the collection. Who doesn't want that, right? Just cast a Horrible Hybrids. And then we have another Floodgate, a Bottomless Pit. Whenever non-airborne minion enters, kill it. Pretty strong, I must say. Because we're Earth, Air, I got a little soot on my finger from, I was lighting a candle. I like candles a lot. So we've got 2 lighthouses that'll help us reach our water and air threshold if needed. Because most of the void walkers, the lower to the ground, cheaper void walkers in this deck are air threshold. And then we have, I kept the accursed tower, break nearby wards. Wards exist, savior exists, and wards are very annoying to get around. So it will be nice if I come up against a ward deck, if I could pop some wards, right? Even though it's not quite tooled towards that. We're hoping to not have to deal with wards. We're hoping to aggro the opponent before they can even ward stuff. And you guys already know with me, I love the tower meta. 1 Gothic, 1 Lone, 1 Dark Tower. If this is the only copy you have in play, gain an extra mana this turn. So 2 mana on each one of these on the first turn. You drop it, right? Pretty standard. I'm just such a fan of this meta. Towers, and then there's like minions that synergize with towers. Who doesn't love these towers? Super strong. We kept the Dark Alley. First minion that enters here gains stealth. Pretty good to give one of your Void Walkers stealth, right? Especially if they're being targeted. We got a Twilight Bloom, extra threshold. Pretty self-explanatory. And just look at this. Wonderful work by Chiao Calazans. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. We got another Floodgate, a Mountain Pass. Minions can't enter this site on the ground if there's already a minion atop. So you just station a minion here and they can't enter it. They have to kill it, zap it with the spell or something before proceeding onto the Mountain Pass. And then we got 2 Spires. It's just for air threshold, nothing special. And finally, we have Den of Evil. This turn, the next evil minion cast to this site costs 1 less, ignoring threshold. A lot of monsters, a lot of evil stuff in this deck, right? So that'd be very cool. Now, the strategy with this, especially when you have a bunch of rivers in your hand and such, when you're trying to really make those work, we want to take advantage of the void as much as possible. We're trying to get the random sites rolled to that side, and we're trying to aggro, but not play our lands forward. So actually, the way you want to play this deck is to play all your sites like this. I call it, it's a W pattern, right? So we go here, here, right? All along the outside. And then hopefully all this will be, by the time they realize you're trying to like play defensively, and we have cards that actually take advantage of us playing to the rear, like Polar Bears, for instance, by the time they realize what you're doing, hopefully the goal is to have as many Voidwalkers as you can possibly have, alternating attacks in and out of the void. That is the most annoying kite strategy, and it is extremely effective. And that is the best way I've found to play this deck. Moving on. All right, and here we've arrived to the minions section. This is the damage dealer, the minions who get the job done. I'm going to show you how we do that here right now. Starting off from least mana costly to most mana costly on our top end, we've got the beautiful Fenvale Muse, art by Jeff Menges. Very cool. Spellcaster, when a Fenvale Muse casts a spell, trigger the genesis of a nearby river. So, her being a spellcaster, we can kill stuff with her. We can cast the draw spells that we need. And every time you cast a draw spell, let's say you cast a Gift of the Frog or a Blink. Let's just say Blink. Use her to cast Blink, teleport a minion, yada yada, do all that stuff, teleport a Voidwalker, whatever. whatever you got to do. When you cast the spell, the cast goes on the timeline first. Casting the spell triggers the genesis of a nearby river. So when you cast a spell with her with rivers present, and it's a nearby river, not all the rivers, but a nearby river, so it's not too powerful. The moment you cast it, pause, trigger the river first, look at the next spell on your deck, and either put it on the top or bottom. Then you do the blink effect of the teleport, then draw a card. Do you see where I'm going with this? You are manipulating your deck in ways that I didn't even think were possible in this game. Fenvale Muse. Check it out. Then we have the illustrious Polar Bears. These cards do work. That's all I'm going to say. Can move as if the top and bottom edges of the realm were connected. So because our strategy is to play to the rear, all of our sights to the rear, right? This is what we use to break that parity. Let's say we're not getting as much Voidwalk as we would like. Well, the Polar Bears are going to sit back here and teleport to and from as they need to either attack or defend your avatar or sights back here, right? Underrated, super good card. I mean, what else is there to say, right? We have one copy, and I will say this is a powerful card. This is the one copy that came with the precon that I didn't decide to change. Submerge and Voidwalk has +1 power for each void in their row, right? So row goes this way is a column, this way is a row. Early game, this card is extremely strong. Late game, as the game continues, its power begins to wane, honestly. And if you draw this late game, you're probably just gonna throw it at something. You're not really going to take advantage of it. So you want to play this as early as possible. I only run one copy. You do not want to see this as more and more sites fill the realm. Moving on. We got 2 copies of Forsaken. Just Voidwalk, must be cast to an outer column. That's its only limitation, but for 2 power, or for 2 mana, you get 3 power. Dude. And if our Harbinger rolled a spot to an outer column, you cast it for 1 less, so it's actually 1 mana. For 3 power for 1 mana, you can cast something to the void. That is pretty insane. And yeah, I run 2 copies for that reason. We've got a Vril Revenant Voidwalk. You can spend as much mana as you want to gain +1 power per mana. So let's say you have like 6 sites in the realm. And just hypothetically, if this is the only guy in your hand, you're like, I just need a beater. Well, you cast him to one of your randomized spots for 1 mana. And then for 5 mana, assuming you have 6 sites and you're generating 6 mana, so you cast him for 1 to one of the randomized Harbinger spots. Then for 5 mana, you give him +5 power this turn. You know what I mean? Like, or next turn you would do that. You would just have him chilling out there. You do some other stuff, and the next turn you beef him up by spending all your mana to give like a killing blow or something like that. Vril Revenant, pretty special indeed. Then we've got the staple Voidwalker, Spectral Stalker. For 2 power, or for 2 mana, you get 2 power and Voidwalk. What else is there to say? And plus, look at that, menacing, coming out of the portal like that. Pretty fantastic. That's just the staple Voidwalker right there. That's why I run 4 copies of it. Deep Sea Mermaids came in the pre-constructed deck. I didn't feel the need to remove it. Because of the Muse, you can throw something to the bottom, right? You cast a spell, you throw something to the bottom, and then you draw off of a blink effect. Then you play something like this where you draw your bottommost spell. So you get that spell anyway. What's not to love, right? And it's a spellcaster, and it can submerge. Not a spellcaster. Only one copy. It is a little expensive on mana and threshold for that result, but it does synergize with the Fenvale Muse and River stuff pretty darn well. Fey Changeling, bounce stuff to your opponent's hand. Bounce their big monster that costs them all their mana to their hand. What's not to love? A face only a mother could love. Look at it. Look at it! And moving on to my... this card just puts in work. Accursed Albatross. You might be thinking, 3 mana for 1 power. What? Are you smoking? Like, what are you doing? Airborne. When a unit kills Accursed Albatross, kill that unit's other allied minions it's nearby. For low to the ground swarm aggro strategies, it's only 1 power, so you careen this. He just careens into a 2 power or a 1 power minion, and it kills every one of their minions, not yours, their minions nearby. Freaking strong. It's a bomb in disguise. It's a bird bomb. Then you have a Phase Assassin. Pretty awesome, coming out of the portal, like, surprise! For 3 power, or 3 mana, 2 threshold, and 3 power, you're getting Voidwalk, and then when he enters the void, he gains stealth. So if there's a spellcaster in the void trying to target your Phase Assassin, they can't, because he gains stealth, right? I don't run more than 2 copies, simply because of that threshold. It's a little pricey, and, you know, I'd rather get like a Forsaken than a Phase Assassin most of the time. But Phase Assassin, super, like, depending on what you're using him for, he's really good. And we got 2 Nomo monitors. Pretty big threshold for 3 power, but he has Submerge and Voidwalk. Pretty straightforward. Those 2 came with the precon. And then we have 2 copies of Peregrine Apparition, and the reason, I mean, like, look at the mana to power ratio. You would say, what? Why would you run this? Well, Airborne, movement +3, and Voidwalk. So if I cast him, if one of my randomized Harbinger spots is like back here, for say, or like in this corner down here, right? I cast him for 1 mana, or excuse me, 2 mana back here, and then he can next turn 1, 2, 3. I don't think there's much more I need to say about that. And it's Voidwalk, so actually you can go 1, 2, 3 all the way next to their avatar, and other such things. Lots of shenanigans with that card. We then have the top end row. We're gonna have we kept the Lacuna Entity just because this is so powerful. Yeah, that's high threshold, but Genesis, drag target weaker minion from an adjacent site here, ignore arena. Pulling stuff into the void is, I think, the most satisfying thing you can do in this game. Okay, and it has Submerge and Voidwalk. Super strong. Then we got the Harkening Kraken. I decided to keep him in there because it's 5 power, and why not? Submerge must be cast Submerge and costs 1 less for every enemy in the body of water. We've got a lot of water sites, so if you're being pushed and aggroed, you can cast it for 1 less, right? We do run a bunch of Shoggoths. 6 power, 5 power, Submerge, Voidwalk, standard. It's, you know, it's comparably, it's pretty good to everything else. Nothing too special about it, but we do have a bunch of Shoggoths because Cthulhu. We're trying to call Cthulhu. And then we have the Shoggoths in the collection, but I'll show you that here in a bit. And we have the illustrious, infamous Gnarled Wendigo. This costs 2 less to cast for each minion you sacrifice at its summoning location. So, using, let's say you have the Harbinger site, or the Harbinger location rolled to like over here, over here, or over here. Well, sacrifice your frog token, and for 3 less, since you're stacking this with the Harbinger effect, You can cast him for 3 mana. That's crazy. Right? You could cast him for free. So, depending on how much you want to sacrifice. And then we have Yogg Sothoth. 10 power beater. Occupies all locations safely. Is banished without 5 voids in the realm. Ignores abilities of sights. This is a game winner. If I've ever seen one, every time I've cast this, I won the game. Now, you do have to do it quickly, because once your opponent realizes they can fill the void with sights and get it banished, I have had this guy banished before, so just be quick and be deliberate when you cast this guy. And finally, we have Dormant Monstrosity, Voidwalk. Maybe cast to a corner void, costing 2 less for each unit in an adjacent square. I just kept this in there because it is super Cthulhu-esque and flavorful. Alright. And I think that does it for our minions. Real quick, folks, I forgot, as I was finishing up this section on the minions, I forgot to bring up the collection. It's just the standard collection from the Harbinger Precon. So, horrible hybrids, which we can conjure up with the Peculiar Port, and then Shoggoths. Pretty standard. And here we've come to our artifacts, magics, and other such shenanigans here. I'm just going to go ahead and get on with it. I'll start from our least mana costly to our top end of these spells here. First, we have a Summoning Sphere. You may summon minions to affected sites. For our Voidwalking aggro strategy, this is pretty good. It supports it very well, right? So if our voids are getting taken up by opponent's sites, go ahead and just drop a Summoning Sphere in between all that and continue to cast monsters and other such things there. I would run another copy of this. I do have another copy of this, but for now, 1 copy does just fine. I don't need it too often, but it is nice to have it sometimes, right? We have a Mix Air. Sacrifice Mix Air this turn. Bearer's next air spell requires no threshold and costs 3 less to cast. Depending on what we're doing with a lot of the, Harbinger spots that are costing you 1 less to cast there anyways, you can cast all kinds of stuff. But typically this means in this deck, because our air threshold Voidwalkers are all, I think they're all 3 mana and below. So I actually just cast an air threshold Voidwalker for free. Doesn't get much better than that. We run 3 copies of Blink. As I've said before on this channel, I think this is a staple in any deck that has air in it. You can teleport an ally and draw a card. Card draw. Card draw is paramount for speed. And then we have Gift of the Frog. Summon a frog token to an allied minion. Draw a spell. Again, capitalizing on the Fenvale Muse with the card draw stuff. And you can summon a little Froge Defender to their location. And speaking of defense, since our strategy is, again, played back, we're going to be running polar bears for the polar offense and everything like that. While we do have floodgates in the form of sites, we can just straight up put up a wall on some barrier of a site that you control that isn't a floodgate. Or if you didn't draw your floodgate, let's say this whole game, I threw a Wall of Ice in there. Wall of Ice is probably the best wall spell in all of sorcery. Conjure atop the board of a site you control. Units can't traverse Wall of Ice on the ground. That's crazy. Units, so not even their avatar can get past this thing. All right. We run 2 copies of Riptide. Target water site pulls in an above ground unit to it's adjacent to draw a card. Card draw, and you can pull their avatar or whatever. And we have a lot of water sites, so pretty good. Especially if they're getting too close, you just yank them in and draw a card off of it. Hopefully you can kill them after you do that. We run 2 copies of Recall. Teleport any number of allied minions to caster's location. The Fenvale Muses are vulnerable. They are 0 power. They will get annihilated pretty quick. So it is helpful to have a call for help in the form of recall. I run 1 disenchant, destroy all auras and artifacts at target location up to 2 steps away. It just hits all of it. Sometimes you just need to blow up someone's artifacts and auras. Fire the Harpoons. I thought this was interesting to throw in there. Deal 1 damage to target minion above or below an adjacent water site and pull it to the caster's location. Come on, focus. Camera's out of focus there for a second. Oh, and you can draw a card. What do you know? It's almost like we're running a theme here to make the muses draw us our cards, right? Stack our deck and draw the cards we actually want. Psionic Blast. Deal 1 damage to each minion here. They're disabled. Disabling is pretty strong. And then speaking of disabling, we have Sleep. Target minion at location up to 2 steps away falls asleep. It's disabled until it takes damage. When I've played against my own deck, I played against this deck with the medieval army. It is so very annoying to have your Vanguard Knights put to sleep, or like your Gyre Hippogriffs. Stuff being put to sleep is extremely annoying, and just look at that gorgeous artwork by Severine Pinot. Pretty sure I pronounced that correctly. We have Swap, as I mentioned in the minions section with the Lacuna entity. Pulling stuff into the void is one of the most satisfying mechanics in the game for me. Swap the location of target minion or artifact with another target minion or artifact. So I have a Forsaken way out to an outer column of the void. I could just swap the locate. Oh, by the way, my Forsaken is right on top of your avatar, and your Gyre Hippogriffs are just sucked into the void. Bye-bye. Solves a lot of problems in a very fun way, right? And we got some damage dealers for when we need to kill stuff occasionally. Shoot 3 projectiles with ice shards. Shoot 3 projectiles 1 at a time. Each deals 1 damage but melts before the 3rd step. Just shoot stuff for 1 damage. Basically a ranged attack, but with +3 range. And we have an Ice Lance. Shoot a projectile, piercing. Deal 3, then 2, then 1 damage to up to 1 unit at each of the first 3 locations. You can take out a lot with this spell, right? I don't think there's much to say on that front. And then we have Monster Morphosis. Disable target nearby minion until your next turn. At the start of that turn, you may transform it into a monster from your hand or a horrible hybrids from your collection. Super versatile. You know, disable one of their minions and then, oh yeah, it becomes one of mine now in the form of a horrible hybrids or a monster from my hand, a Shoggoth or something. That's pretty frustrating to have done to somebody. And then on the flip side, turning our own stuff into other things from our deck. We have Shapeshift, 2 copies because it's super powerful. An allied minion tries to transform. Look at the next 5 spells. You may choose a minion among them to be the new form. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So if a Fenvale Muse casts this, triggers the genesis of a nearby river. Cast trigger goes off for the Muse. The river effect, look at the top spell. If it's a monster you want something to transform into, keep the spell on top and then transform it. It's crazy. It's really good. Then we got Into the Abyss. Submerge target minion or pull it into a void it's adjacent to. Again, I don't think I need to say this, but I will continue to beat the drum. Pulling stuff into the void just rocks. It's just so fun. Abyssal Assault. For each point of its power, an allied monster may deal 1 damage to a unit in a square near it. Casting this onto a Shoggoth, dealing 5 damage. What is not to love about that? You're using the Shoggoth's power to annihilate stuff before it steps onto a site or swings at an avatar, right? And then I kept this one from the precon, Call of the Sea. Really expensive, but minions adjacent to water site step towards it, then submerge it. So you can drown everything, right? Pretty self-explanatory. And there is our magics. All right, there we have it, folks. We featured the Harbinger Voidwalker Call to the Void deck here today. I showed you the Muse tech with the rivers. I showed you the Voidwalkers. I showed you the floodgates. I showed you the big monsters. What more is there to love? This is the first deck I started building. It just kind of all came to me very slowly as I pulled stuff out of boxes, kept tweaking, kept working on it. But if it's one thing, either me or anybody else who's played this deck, like my friends, can tell you, it's that this deck has a lot of tricks up its sleeve. And if you're not prepared for it, then it will just run you over in the end. So if you like thinking outside of the box, literally, because if you think about it, most sorcerer games end up playing in this grid right here. And if the game goes long enough, they play out here. Well, this deck completely basically flips that on its head. We're playing all the way back. And again, like I said before, by the time your opponent realizes what you're doing, they may not have building straight across, right? If they're smart, they would build straight across, but then they would overextend and you'd swallow them whole. So meanwhile, they're getting attacked by Voidwalkers on either side. And I usually use the Voidwalkers to alternate attacks like this, right? And it causes them to get super frustrated and it trips them up. That's why this deck is so fun. But it does take a skilled pilot. I will say, if you don't know what you're doing, this deck doesn't seem as straightforward as one would think. So as long as you play smart, as long as you maintain the idea that we're trying to take advantage of the void as much as possible, keep as much void space as possible, then you will succeed, right? So I hope you all enjoyed it. I'm still working on how to tool gameplay. I do want to feature live tabletop gameplay for all of you to see. So if you guys, and I'm still deciding, help me out. Do we play with the moves sped up and I narrate and pause and kind of like explain by pausing, which takes a lot of editing and such, and it will take videos a lot longer to get out? Or do we just play raw and then like in editing just kind of snip it or whatever? Please throw your 2 cents down in the comments there. I will be reading and I will be considering I don't know, what do you guys think? How would you like to see live tabletop gameplay take place on a YouTube channel? I want to keep it fresh, I want to keep it moving, I want to keep it energetic. So yeah, but in any case, this has been your resident aggro mage. I hope you're all doing great wherever you're at, all things considered, and have a good one. Peace.